This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
To our first conversation, we unfortunately struggling to get hold of Valentine in Nigeria, but right now we're speaking to Olivia Chimbiri, who serves as the Chief Information Officer at Pax Africana Holdings and Managing Director of Pax Technologies, in honor of the birth of Nelson Mandela, the month of July being Mandela Month. 750AMPED is a proactive intervention that leverages on the power of youth. We've spoken about this before, and it inspires changes in social behavior through training, education and awareness, while simultaneously alleviating panic, combating stigma, misinformation, disinformation around COVID-19, particularly among socially vulnerable communities and areas with high transmission potential. Let's welcome Olivier on the line. Good morning.
Good morning, Quina. How are you?
I'm good, and how are you, Olivier?
I'm well. Thank you, Quina.
Great stuff.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for talking to us. For those who might not know, we've had this conversation before about 750AMPED, but just tell us a little bit more about who or what is 750AMPED all about.
So, Quina, you did such a great job. I was about to say there's no need for me to be on this interview.
You can go back to sleep then. It's fine.
You're really great at what you do, my friend. But yeah, 750AMPED is a national campaign. As you mentioned, that it's a proactive initiative that we've done in partnership with the CETA, and it's essentially the 750, as you've mentioned it. What we've got 750 field workers across 5 different provinces in 45 different locations. And that's where the 750 comes from. Mm-hmm. But it also stands for fighting the coronavirus 7 days a week, using the 5 basic preventive measures to fight the coronavirus on our journey towards zero infections, which in this time we really are still staying hopeful that we can eventually get there. But one must believe in anything, if anything else. So that's really the campaign, as you mentioned it. We're really seeking to educate, really influence the behavioral change amongst the socially vulnerable communities, especially in highly dense, highly populated areas across the country, looking to give people the right knowledge about COVID-19, especially as it's a constant evolving thing that we're all learning around the world about that. And also making sure that in this time we can provide, job opportunities for the young for the youth that might feel a little bit confused and lacking for opportunities during these times.
And so far, I mean, COVID-19 has been, from South Africa's perspective, one can say from March. So it's been a couple of months. In terms of just getting the message across, are we managing to get that message across?
So, Quinn, I think in this time, in this pandemic, what's going to be key is consistency and incremental progress, and that's essentially an effort that's got to be done by everybody. Now, I can't speak to the whole country. There's definitely been a lot of great initiatives the government and private companies have taken. I think you've also seen the nature of advertisements on television has changed to quite a lot of emphasis on that. But as a campaign, we've been quite consistent. And in fact, in our social media handles, you'll find we've got a few testimonials from some of the different field workers across the country who highlight even the importance of the consistency, of the persistence of trying to reach out to people who may not have access. Just to give you an example, Quinn, just to make sure that we weren't coming up with a concept that's designed centrally in a boardroom but never implemented. We all made sure that we spent some time on the ground in the different provinces. I spent a lot of time in the Eastern Cape, in East London, Queenstown, Port Elizabeth, in Nompumelelo, Zamontclair, Wellman, and so forth. And you'll find that there's some communities that don't have access to electricity. You'll find that there's areas where they don't have access to the knowledge. So just having people there on the ground, consistently working 5 days a week in the different areas, they're reaching out to people who, as much as we're putting out these campaigns by the government and as a country as an effort, are still not getting the message. So yes, consistency is absolutely key, and incremental effort is something that's going to be needed still for a couple of months moving forward.
And what would you say has been some of the key milestones of the campaign so far?
Sure. So I would say we've data capturers, which essentially are people that go and not just teach about the behavioral change in the community, but also conduct a survey that we've quite carefully crafted, working in partnership with UNISA and a couple of other organizations. And what we've seen is that there's three main areas that that the responses have evolved in, and it's things as simple as, if a person contracts COVID-19, is it their fault, right? And we've seen that there's initially always been a slant towards the yes. About 1,492 responses have come from there. We've seen in the topic around if someone has contracted COVID-19, they should be expelled from work. People's perceptions around work and the health matters towards this. And we've seen a massive shift towards about 72% of the 1,500 plus responses saying that, yes, people should be expelled if they end up becoming positive. So there's a couple of themes that we're seeing around how people react to the knowledge, how people respond to people around them that have this. And if you allow me just one quick example, as we began this project, early on in the project, we had, so as I think you know, that we make sure that everybody gets tested, all the field workers, before they go out. And in some of these cases, for most of the learners, had they not been tested through this campaign, they would not have had the interest to go and get tested as a starting point. And one of our learners in Alexander who did test positive, when we had our initial call with him, he mentioned that, after going to tell his neighbor, the people that he lives with and his friends in his neighborhood, that he had tested positive and now he's going to take the measures as set out by the NICD, some of them laughed at him. Others said to him, what are you talking about? This thing doesn't exist. Just go on with your life. And in fact, he let us know that he's actually more inspired now to go back, to make sure that he takes all the right measures to go back now into the community and make sure, because he now himself realizes that this thing is real. So we've seen a number of those behavioral changes across the board, across the 45 different locations from province to province, which, as we said, it's maybe just, a few people, but we hope that everybody picks up the attitude of just trying to make a difference with one person as we continue on with this campaign. But that's been a very big progress that we've seen amongst the people.
So, speak about the key learnings and especially touching on the issue of stigma.
Sure.
Interesting that you mentioned that there are people who actually feel that a person who was tested positive should not be returning to work. So that means if that was the case here at Power, I wouldn't be coming back to work because I actually recovered like 10 days ago or thereabouts from COVID-19. But, the thing is the experience, of field workers and agents in interacting with community members, as you've just mentioned.
Sure.
Are we getting through to people? Is the reality setting in? Because one of the big problems when Olivier that we encounter is that there's still those sections of people saying, let me just go on with my life, because we're not too sure. I don't know anybody who has contracted this. I don't know anybody who has died. There's a lot of what do you call this? Conspiracy theories around COVID-19, and from all walks of life. I mean, even Donald Trump has conspiracy theories about this. So how then do the field workers, the agents, deal with those sort of things? Are they well equipped to answer those questions?
Yes. So, Quinn, thank you so much for that. I'm glad that you highlighted that the conspiracy theories are not just a South African matter. It's all around the world we see this. One thing that we vigorously do is make sure we send people out prepared. So we've got e-learning modules that we've worked by putting together. And what we've done as well, Quinn, is that understanding that English is not everybody's first language, right? And even more so, how do you communicate to a community in English about a topic that you might not even understand yourself? So the learning modules are absolutely critical. What we've done as well is we've made them available in 4 different local vernacular languages, including as well as English on top of that, to make sure that people really get to understand, what it is that they're communicating. There's little tests that they all do at the end of the modules, also just to get a sense of comprehension. We constantly make sure that those are updated as well, so that people stay up to date with what's happening. Now, most of the time that suffices, but rightfully, as you've mentioned, and you'll hear from some of the testimonies of the field workers across the country, in some cases, people just don't want to engage with them at all. They'll speak and they say, listen, I'm not really interested in hearing what you need to say. And one example of how this took place in our project, I found in one of our visits to the Eastern Cape, we had to go and deliver PPE for one of the field workers who had tested positive before being able to start. Right, so we just had a GPS location, and I'm sure, like anybody who's visited any of the townships or rural areas, GPS locations that might represent one suburban home. Might represent 3 or 4 different homes in a township, in a rural area, right? So as we were driving down this road, trying to identify which household that we need to stop by to deliver the PPE, you could clearly see on that street, there was no social distancing at all, no wearing of masks. Kids are playing outside. It really was any other day in December, right? But interestingly enough, as we were looking for the house, there was one home that stood out. And we saw people wearing masks at that home. And we just thought to ourselves, it's got to be that home. So we called the learner, and the learner's mother actually, picked up the phone, and she waved at us. And we realized that, it just takes one family, it just takes one person to be actively involved in this. And you start seeing the difference. That household was the one household on that whole street that stood out. So it's not going to, you're not going to fight the stigmas overnight. But the more that we fight it, the better that the chances are at eventually convincing even the Donald Trumps to eventually wear the masks, as he did in the end.
So, and just finally, maybe,
sure.
The issue of technology. How has this campaign leveraged the use of technology to reach out to various communities? I mean, contact tracing, short codes, SMS, and so on and so forth.
Perfect. Do you have your phone with you by any chance, Quinn?
Yes.
Okay. So what we've recently done, Quinn, since the last time we've spoken to you, is we've launched a short code, which is 30544. So I'd like you to please send an 0544.
Say that again. We got cut off. You say I must send?
Sure. An SMS to 30544.
30544. Yeah.
Yes. And what I want you to type is the word testing.
Testing.
Then leave a space.
Uh-huh.
And for the sake of this example, we'll try Parktown. So Park space town, yes.
Parktown. Right.
Okay. Now, essentially,
So should I press send?
Yes, press send. It's absolutely free. It doesn't cost the community anything. We take on that cost as a company. And what this does is that we realized that we needed to account for people who may not have access to smartphones. So we have a website as well, 750AMPED.co.za, which is available in 5 different languages, including, again, 4 local vernacular languages. We're really emphasizing in making the content locally understandable by the people in the communities. We're working on mobile apps as well, on iOS and Android, which we hope to release soon. Just tweaking out a couple of matters. But the key thing as well, as I mentioned, is the short codes as well. I don't know if you've received a response yet.
Yeah. So I the first one I sent testing Parktown, and it said, what was it? We are unaware of a testing site in your area. Please try using the name of your city or call 0800 2999. But then I sent my neighborhood where I actually stay, and it says Intercare Northlands Corner, Shopping Center Corner, Vetkoppen Road, and Newmarket Street, and so on. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So you got your testing. The idea with this is there's a number of short codes. For the sake of time, we won't be able to go through all of them.
Sure.
But what we do is that you can find your local testing center around you. And what we do is that we're really studying all of these responses, understanding what are the locations that people are looking for, doing a lot of analytics on those to be able to communicate with companies and governmental entities that are providing testing for them to also be able to understand where is the demand coming from as well in that regard. You will also get in the short codes information about COVID-19, what the 750 AMP is about, and a number of other things. So these are some of the interventions that we're using technology as. As I mentioned, all the field workers as well have received a tablet, and they have data as well in which they do the learnings to make sure that they constantly stay up to date. We've got the research going on. There's a lot of analytics and dashboards that we're using to get the research data coming out of there as well. So we really have looked at how do we connect technology and the youth, not to mention as well the social media platforms that are there, to make sure that we really deliver holistic value in connecting people, processes, and technology in this campaign.
Mm. And just finally, then, Olivier, how can people find find out more about 750 AMPED, and then more about the work and what you guys are doing the campaign itself?
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So our social media handles on Instagram is 750 AMPED, one word, 750 AMPED. On Twitter is the same, 750 AMPED. Or you can also find us on Facebook, 750 AMPED. Otherwise, you could also email us at inquiries@750amp.co.za if it is that you want to engage with us on a matter. We've got our website, as I mentioned as well, 750amp.co.za, and our short code, as I mentioned, absolutely free, whether you have a brick. That is the 30544 campaign, and we'll make sure that we engage. We'll respond as soon as we get your messages.
All right. Olivier, thank you very much for talking to us. Appreciate your time and your insight.
Thank you, Quinn. It's been a privilege. Have a great day, further.
All right, you too. Olivier Chimbiri talking to us there about 750 AMPED. So do check that out. Check the testing areas around your site.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.